Hello, I'm State Senator John Kavanagh, and welcome to another edition of Kavanagh's Corner. The topic of this edition is terrorism. Like many of you, I spent New Year's Day glued to my television trying to get information about the horrific terrorist attack that occurred in New Orleans on New Year's Day, the early morning hours. And as it turns out, it was an ISIS-inspired terrorist attack by a homegrown terrorist who may or may not be coordinating with ISIS outside the country or have co-conspirators within the country. But the bottom line is, this shows us that terrorism is still a threat against our nation. This reminded me of my first exposure to a terrorist attack. When I was a Port Authority police officer near retirement in 1993, I was involved with a drug interdiction program in the Washington Heights section of New York City when the word came over the radio that there had been an explosion in the World Trade Center. Initial reports were that it was a large transformer that exploded. But when we responded and got there, we saw a massive hole blown into the lower parking levels of the World Trade Center. It was a terrorist bomb. And further investigation revealed that it was an ISIS-inspired terrorist attack in our own country. That was the wake-up call that we should have heeded, but it wasn't. We didn't do enough after that attack at the World Trade Center in '93 to go against ISIS. And sure enough, along came 9/11, a more horrific attack that brought down both towers of the World Trade Center. Again, Islamic terrorism striking our nation. That caused a massive response internationally with our military fighting ISIS and conquering them overseas, and in addition, internally, with our federal and state and local police taking efforts to root out terrorism in our country. But what happened a few days ago in New Orleans shows us that terrorism has not been totally wiped out in our nation. And in fact, we may be at greater risk now than we were several years ago because our southern border has been left wide open. An estimated 10 million people have illegally crossed into our country over the border in the last 4 years. I remember a commentator on one of the news shows on New Year's Day stating that if only 0.1% of these people were terrorists, we would have thousands of terrorists in our nation. This is indeed a threat, and it tells us that border security should be a top priority, not only for the federal government, but for Arizona. And Arizona took a good step in passing the proposition that gets local police involved in immigration enforcement and other steps. But we must go further. We must be involved with better securing our border. Now, prior to this terrorist attack several days ago, I already had a couple bills in development that will deal with that, bills whose passage is now more important. One of those bills which I was proposing would be to reimburse police departments to send their officers to federal training. There's a 4-week course they can send the officers to. And after completing that course, they are certified to question and determine the immigration status of people. I would like to see our corrections officers, some of them trained in this, and some detention officers, so that when people are arrested or when people are sent to prison in Arizona, qualified officers screen them. And where we discover that some of them are illegal immigrants, we notify the immigration authorities, who can then put a detainer on these people and pick them up for deportation when they are released. In addition, the federal government has announced that they are going to be going all out in rounding up illegal immigrants, especially the criminals, but they need places to put these illegal immigrants. Arizona currently has 2 prisons which are closed. The Marana facility, which holds about 500 inmate beds, that's been closed and it's vacant. And the Florence South complex, which also can hold about 500 prisoners, is also vacant. I will be passing a bill to not only appropriate money to train the officers to screen people, but to also have the state lease to the federal government both of those facilities, if they want, for $1 a year to house the illegal immigrants, many of them criminals and those deported before, who they will be rounding up for deportation. The question is, will I get Democrat support? because while I can get enough Republican votes in both chambers, the governor could veto these bills. Now, the governor recently said that she wants to support border security, as many Democrats have in the aftermath of their rather shocking defeat in this election. They've been doing some re-examination. So I'm hoping that the woke Democrats have awakened to the dangers of illegal immigration and will support me in a modest amount of money to train our detention and correction officers, to screen prisoners for their immigration status, and for $1 a year to make our 2 empty prisons available to the immigration authorities to detain illegal immigrants who are in the process of being booted out of the country. Time will tell if I will get the support of the Democrats and the governor. I hope I will. Thank you for watching.